Good morning, Karoly Poka.
Good morning.
How
For
are
me,
you,
it's
sir?
like afternoon, but
It is. I was about to point that out. And it's just barely morning here in North Carolina. It's 11 o'clock.
thanks
And
for the
you,
invite.
sir, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us at the Cosmic Summit 2025, June 20th to 23rd.
It's my
Longest day of
pleasure.
the year. Yeah. Did you put together that it's on the solstice yet?
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. And I should be getting an insurance quote today for a field trip that we'll take. And I'll make sure to get you on the bus for that. It's going to be interesting.
Cool.
Okay, solstice related field trip because there's a Monadnock mountain that leaves a special shadow 45 minutes away. It's the only thing like that within 150 miles. So we got to go see it on the summit. Okay, we'll put that aside for a moment. So you were in Zurich. You were
Yes.
an engineer,
Yep.
electrical engineer, if I understand correctly.
Yes. So basically,
Yeah.
I'm from Hungary, Budapest, and my background is engineering, electrical engineering. So I have a bachelor and master in electrical engineering,
Mm-hmm.
specialized in robotics, intelligent vehicles, control systems, and deep learning based computer vision.
Kind of classic Central European engineering. You know what I
Kind of,
mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a lot of skill of that type
Yeah,
in
we did a lot
Switzerland and
of different
Hungary.
kind
And
of courses and specializations. Yeah, it's quite
mm-hmm.
diverse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, people have been working for many centuries to refine all of these things. I mean, it's still the same old jobs, but different tools,
Yes.
right? And I'm very interested in your tools. You are going to be coming to the summit, and you're going to have something new this year that we're doing, where it's hands-on, best we can, interactive. Drop by the room and come see Karoly and his team discuss, demonstrate, and also display some limited number of vases.
Yeah, that's what we are planning to do with Adam Young.
That's right.
So I'm teamed up with Adam, and he created the Artifact Foundation. And yeah, it's kind of it's a bit a long story, but if you're interested, I can tell you the entire thing.
I am, and we're going to get right in it. But just so I don't lose anybody that's not following the most interesting unconventional history subject in the world right now, let me describe these vases. Just try to give them the elevator understanding. God, I knew you were going to do that. I do not have one. This is the brand new Cosmic Summit headquarters, and I've got 50 of them, and I do not have one here. And I realized it 10 minutes before this podcast talking to Steph, and I was like, I don't have a vase. What am I doing? I'm like,
Well, I have
oh, I love the blue one, man. I don't have one that hue. I'm not even sure I've got a red one, but it's like red. We call NC State red here in North Carolina. That look at there.
So this is the OG vase owned by Adam Young.
Yeah, that's the OG vase. Yeah.
And the other one is Matt Bell's vase, the spinner.
And that's the spinner. Huh. I have not, well, the OG vase, of course, Adams, right? So I haven't seen that one. The spinner, I have been down and had the good fortune to go down to Bradenton, Florida, and go to Matt's shop and see that. And I just felt blessed the whole time. I mean, I don't mean to be silly, but you know what I mean? It was just neat to be not just around great art, which always is special, if you want to call it that. Well, let me just say these vases are perfect. And people don't understand. And they come from a time where perfection is not noted, which is pre-dynastic Egypt. Or as our friends, the Brothers of the Serpent, call these people butt flap people. And that is a humorous way of communicating something serious, is that after certain points in history, when you look back, you just ascribe everything for the next 20,000 to 300,000 years as being ignorant brutes with the most limited of skills. And that's true for Egypt. It's true all over the world. It depends on where you pick the time. But you pick that time around Egypt, so let's call it 4,000 years ago. And before that, it was supposed to be pre-dynastic Egyptians that were of a different nature, and they did not have a pharaoh, and they did not have hieroglyphs, and they did not build pyramids, but they did have graves. And they would have limited grave goods, and then these graves at times include two different things. vases made from hard stone, and stop me if I get anything wrong. And vases made of alabaster or lesser, or is it pottery? Where
Both.
you have the cruder ones in the grave, they are what?
Yeah, but they are pottery.
They're
Alabaster
pottery.
is more like
And
from
then the
dynastic
dynastic
Egyptians.
Egyptians started making flawed ones, relatively flawed, beautiful, but relatively flawed. Okay, so you've kind of got three different classes of these things. So in the oldest graves, you're finding them pottery, which these people will get into that, but you find hard stone ones, some of the hardest stone in the world, and has been well documented. And the point of this podcast and many, many others, if people aren't aware, is that these vases have now been scanned with some of the most sophisticated tools and technology available to modern science and metrology, and they're perfect for all intents and purposes. We can sit here and talk about microns here and microns there, and we will, but
Not all of them.
not all of them. Thank you.
Huge number of them are perfect. Or what is perfect? That's a great.
That's why this is as much a philosophical discussion ultimately on a lot of levels as it is a historical one, because you have so little information historically. All you have is the object, and it has zero context.
Let me ask you first, do you have something to drink?
Yeah.
Because I have a creamy pint. Sorry for that,
I
but
meant to go get a Guinness this morning.
I'm always
man.
drinking this during the shows. So,
and I made Beckett, who works with us on our team yesterday. I said, I'm going to go get a Guinness. He goes, hell yeah. Damn it. And I forgot. I was so rushed getting out of the house, I couldn't have gone by and gotten a Guinness anyway.
It's fine.
And it's 11 a.m.
Well, yeah.
Which is true. A little late to be drinking.
In Ireland, it could be a breakfast Guinness, but.
That's right. Very, very, very true. We were drinking here last night during a Cosmic Summit team call, but it was after 5:30.
Sorry for interrupting.
So where shall we start, sir? What's on your mind? Please give us the long story.
So I could give you my full background story and how I ended up scanning those vases.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, my interest for ancient history has begun in my childhood, probably. You can imagine the little boy growing up on The Mummy or Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park. So I really wanted to be a paleontologist in primary school. And then I somehow shifted towards technical science. So I fell in love with the Marvel movies, Iron Man and those things. And in high school, I built a real-life exoskeleton glove, like a metal glove. And then it was kind of a straight ticket to university, technical university in Budapest. And then I did my studies there. And then I came to Switzerland to work for medical companies as a research engineer. And then probably a few years back, so I always had like an open mind set for these kind of alternative views, but I always been kind of skeptic too. So like both things, open-minded skeptic, I would say. And then probably I got a boring job or something, and I started to listen to Joe Rogan. And then I've seen Robert Schoch, Graham Hancock, Ben Van Kerkwyk, John Anthony West on that show. And then I ended up reading Robert Schoch's book, The Origin of the Sphinx. And then I started to watch Ben's videos. I've seen the vases, and it was like a very smoking gun thing for me. Like, what the heck is going on? I was not sure if those guys are making those videos for views or what's their intent. So I didn't know if I can trust the data. I was watching all the debunkers parallel to the alternative history guys. So I was trying to figure out what's happening. And then I had this idea one day to approach museums, because I heard that there was a big problem with the provenance of these vases. And then, I had this idea, if no one else did it before, let's approach museums in Europe, maybe with a scientific background. I did several publications, so maybe I have a better chance to approach them as an engineer, and then we can see what's happening. And then the Petri Museum, I sent a bunch of emails. I got a bunch of rejections too, but the Petri Museum was answering kindly, and they were open for such an appointment.
And they had a wonderful collection too.
Yes, so
what a good one too.
It's wonderful. Yeah. It was the teaching collection of Flinders Petri, who was working in a Victorian era, and
arguably for people who aren't familiar, the world's greatest Egyptian archaeologist.
Probably, yes. Yeah.
Now, some people would argue that, and particularly our crowd would argue he is. So I get that bias, but he's our guy. He's great. He was open-minded as hell. But go ahead. So Petri Museum.
He was one of the first engineers who actually started to look at those things from a scientific point of view and measuring things correctly and analyzing them from an engineering perspective. He was also a surveyor, so he did know how to measure things. So I had this appointment, and I have also another appointment in the Museo Egizio in Turin. It's the second largest Egyptian museum after Cairo. Mm-hmm. It's in Italy, and it will happen soon. That project. And after I had all
what
these.
What is the name of the museum again? I was not familiar.
I think it's then the name is Italian, so probably
it's
I'm not
Italian.
Going.
So it's the Italian. What city?
Turin, where they have the shred.
Turin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it will happen soon, somewhere in this spring. And after I had all these appointments, I was signing up for the Egypt trip with Uncharted X and the Snake Bros. Mm-hmm. And on that trip, I met a lot of interesting people. I met Adam Young. Mm-hmm. I started to talk about my museum projects, and a lot of people got interested quite fast about that. And we just teamed up with Adam, because it's just easier to do the same thing when we are not separated into different teams, but together. And I also made the Snake Bros join, and another guy I met on the tour called Chris King. He's a precision manufacturing expert. He is the founder of the Chris King Precision Components. Maybe you know that brand?
Well, I'm aware of him because of seeing content from the trip and whatnot, that he knows his components.
Yeah, so
he knows an object.
Yeah, they are producing very high precision hub sets and headsets for high-end bikes.
Yeah, for bikes. Yeah, which is serious Swiss engineering often. Yeah.
And he also joined us in London, and a few other people from the trip, because a smaller group just was still in contact. So they were maybe from London, living in the US, or visiting London or something, and we could synchronize our schedule. So we did this appointment. Actually, we had two Mondays, and between the 2 Mondays, because they only had these research appointments on Monday, between these 2 appointments, actually, we also met Hugh Newman.
Oh, yeah.
He showed us around Stonehenge and Avebury. It was.
Now, you also met Miss Stephanie Mark.
Yes, that's correct.
Of the Cosmic Summit, but she was not out front like everyone else, because Cosmic Summit, we stay in the back.
Yeah, but she did great photography on around the Stonehenge and that special gathering we had.
She is also an electrical engineer. Did you know that?
No, really? Yeah, she told me
sure
in a
is.
pub. Yeah, I know. I remember. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's also an author.
Which books?
She said, well, no, I'm not sure if they've been published, but she's had the determination to sit down and write a book. I don't know. A lot of people have done that. She's
But in
very,
what topic?
very smart person. Multi-talented. But that's it. For people who don't know, that's Steph Mark, and she's the kind of the director of the Cosmic Summit, part of our team, me, Steph, and Beckett.
She's quite efficient in organizing.
She
stuff,
is.
what I've seen so far, yeah.
I am less so. But she's from Edinburgh, Scotland, so she's able to kind of peek in on UK things that I'm unable to, which is cool. But I'm not above popping up over there. I was jealous as hell. But go ahead. So you've done the Petri.
Yeah, we have done the Petri.
Are you re-Petrying? Because these are personal questions of mine. The Petri, you've been there, just looking at y'all's schedule and your research schedule. Okay, as far as being at physical places, Todd, you say you're going to Italy and and then you will give the same treatment to some of the objects that you have given at the Petri.
That's the plan, yeah.
Okay.
So we had several measurements in the Petri. Mm-hmm. I can talk about those too.
But are you going back to the Petri, just so I understand the calendar again? I mean,
no.
What's next with the Petri?
When we were there, we had not 1 day, but 2 days.
And you're fine.
Two appointments in October last year.
Gotcha.
2024, yeah.
And you got all the data you need for now for your purposes from Petri.
Yes.
And then you're moving on to Italy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the plan. So together with the Artifact Foundation, we try to collect as much data as possible from museums all around the world. So we will have several scanning appointments in the US and also in Europe. Mm-hmm. But they are still under organizing, and then we will try to do the best. Because it's really hard. So a lot of people, so most of the people are from the US. So Adam, the Snakes, Chris King, mm-hmm. and most of the museums I could arrange. So they are in Europe, Italy, Germany, London. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we went there in the Petri, and I had all these people helping me. I couldn't do it without them, actually. So it was a very huge teamwork. Mm. So we did the 3D scanning. Mm-hmm. We did caliper measurements. So Chris King was measuring a few vases with gauge calipers to check the wall thickness deviation of some of these vases. Sometimes they are so tiny that we just couldn't put the caliper inside the vase. So it was challenging because the scanner couldn't really capture if the vase is very small, the scanner couldn't capture the full interior. So it was a laser scanner, and it's kind of triangulating the reflection, or based on the laser beam reflection, is triangulating the data points. So you have to find the right spot, and when you don't have the right spot, for example, for the interiors, because the opening is so tiny, the cameras cannot see inside.
Was that unexpected, Karoly? When you went, was that like a field discovery while you're at the Petri? No, we can't get this. Were you disappointed?
No, or we did practice this before. We were consulting with the manufacturer company, because they are supporter of my podcast, and they were showing us what and how we can do with the scanner. It's a very compact and versatile scanner, basically, with different technologies integrated, but we picked the laser scanning feature because that's the most accurate one. So there are a few differences between scanning technologies, but this was the most mobile and most accurate to this. So the best choice, basically, for this kind of museum research, because you can do X-ray scanning. You can put it in an X-ray, and basically it's called CT scanning, but it's using X-ray to measure what's in the vase and the full geometry, because it can also look into the
now that
walls.
You have not used that.
We didn't use that because we couldn't
that's not, you can't transport that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where you ship it off to somebody and say, send me back a
but that's not possible with museum pieces. We cannot do that.
That's right. So
So we had two other options, actually three. Structured light. Structured light scanning is basically when what Adam did first with the OG vase. So when we started this entire vase scan thing, he did structured lights. He scanned it at a professional company. I don't know the name, maybe GOM or something like that. They scanned it with a structured light. So this one, the OG vase, was scanned with a structured light scanner. It's kind of projecting a pattern on the geometry. And with cameras, it's measuring or detecting how this pattern is distorted. And based on the distortion, it will calculate the dimensions. But this needs a very big projector, double cameras, or even more. It's a big device. You need a stand, a very stable tripod or something. You have to put it on, and it's also relatively big.
Is it using lasers, or is it another application, kind of a photogrammetry?
It's using usually blue light.
It's using blue light.
Not lasers, but blue light, because it's more distinguishable when you're measuring it. You want to pick up the distortion.
But then does it put a mesh on it?
Kind of, yeah.
And
it can be different kind of patterns.
And sees, okay. Oh my gosh. Hold on, I've got this robotic camera that's.
So it's projecting some kind of a mesh or some kind of pattern. Probably differs by manufacturer. I have no idea. But it's based on measuring the distortion of this pattern. And it's not necessarily using lasers, but blue light or some very distinctive light, which can be distincted, or it's distinctive from the background lights and all the surrounding lightings. And
so that's difficult to haul into someone's museum.
That's also a little. It's more feasible than CT, but it's still a very big instrument.
Gotcha. Okay,
Fly
so that's
around
the next level of difficulty. So then you move on to?
We moved into this handheld laser scanner, because based on my preliminary research, which I did before I asked the company, I thought that 20 micron should be enough for us.
Okay, right. And actually, I know that's a long way from what's needed. Yeah, which is incredible.
So this scanner is capable of capturing data with 20 micron accuracy, which means that the captured data will be, in worst case, 20 micron apart from the original dimensions or something. So the captured data
can
point,
it resolve things, imperfections less than 20 microns?
No. So it's like I have measured geometry, and the points in the scan data will be 20 in worst case 20 micron apart from the actual real data.
Which I'm presuming, based off my limited knowledge, but following this stuff, that's not granular enough.
No, it's
is it?
It's quite good for us, yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, and that's what you can capture with it. Okay,
so the accuracy between the captured and the real data will be 20 micron. So if the real vase deviates more than 20 micron, we can see that. If it's deviate less than 20 micron from the perfect circle or something, then it's not enough. But I assumed at the beginning that 20 micron will be enough, because that will be also huge. The OG vase was deviating around 12 to 20 micron.
Yeah, I thought when it falls up, but those are the perfect ones. And of course, there are plenty that aren't perfect. And again, we're using perfect as a substitute for as good as it gets. Okay. Tell me this, or does the deviance between any two given points?
No. That's the resolution. That's the resolution. That's different. So the resolution is the minimal distance between 2 points in the scan data.
Right. But whatever the XYZ of that could be off 20 microns.
Yeah.
But it probably isn't, right? I mean, you don't see 1 point here and then, or is it, I don't know. I don't mean to get too geeky about it because I'm not an engineer, but I do kind of get curious about this stuff. Okay. So you're able to use an instrument beyond comprehension as a measurement instrument, what, 50 years ago? You'd surely say 50 years ago, there was just nothing like that, right? 20 years ago?
Well, you can achieve like 5 micron accuracy scans with
calipers?
No, with a structured light scanner.
Right.
It can be very accurate, but then you need to have a stable tripod and all these technique behind. If you want handheld, because we are holding this in our hands and we are rotating I will show you some videos. Maybe it's even better if we show it.
Yeah, please.
So this handheld scanner is capturing the data while we are rotating this vase on a roll tab, which is marked actually. So the markers are for the movement tracking, so the laser can know where it's positioned because it has to track something. And it's projecting some kind of grid, but it's not a structured light. It's just a laser scanning. It's projecting a grid on the vase, and based on the laser beam's reflection, it will calculate that how far are they, and it will just compile the entire geometry.
It's beautiful.
And that's what I meant by 20 micron accuracy. So the scan data will deviate maximum 20 micron from the original one, which means if we have a deviation on the original one less than 20 micron, then probably we won't be able to see it. But I decided that this was the cutting edge until now, actually. This is another interesting piece. So this is still the cutting edge device, which is portable, handheld, and we can easily use it in a museum space, because as you can see, the space are very limited. In the museum, we had to do the 3D scanning. On the other side, as you can see, Kyle is doing a different measurement. I will show that too. It's a kind of endoscopic measurement. We want to see inside the tiny vases. And on the same spot, Chris King was also doing.
So you're not using the same technology there. It just happens to be putting the mesh over there, right?
Yeah, it's just projecting it all over the place. Yeah.
It's amazing how well the mesh almost looks like CGI laid onto video. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it looks like a special effect rather than an actual thing that's going on. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite coherent. It's a laser. Yeah. So Kyle was doing the endoscopic measurements on the other side. He recorded the interior of the vases because we wanted to have like a recording of it to see any possible tool marks, or maybe we would be able to reconstruct the internal geometry based on photogrammetry. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but
no, not at all.
This is the second measurement technique which I've described so far, the laser, and then there is a different one called photogrammetry,
right?
Where you are basically taking pictures of an object with overlap between the frames, and with a special software finding similar edges between the different frames. You can stitch those things together, put it in a kind of place the frames in space, and reconstruct the 3D data, the 3D model based on those pictures.
Right. And did I understand right when you were on with the Brothers of the Serpent on the recent podcast? I was unable to watch it, which is really sucks for some of these things because they're so visual. But was I right to understand that you were using photogrammetry on the ground at sites as well? Or did I
Yes.
misunderstand? Okay, I didn't misunderstand that. So you were putting a target down and all of that, going through a photogrammetry process. And I remember Kyle or Rush, both of them were impressed that you were, able to go in there kind of loud and proud and actually do that stuff instead of acting like you're taking tourist photos, which is generally our approach.
Well, actually, we had special permission to these places to go there. And by taking high quality photos of objects and measuring the scale. So if we have a scale with a 3D scan, or if we scale it just with a precision tape measure or something, then we are able to reconstruct the full scale data. Obviously.
Okay, just so people understand, though, it's interesting when you go on these trips, all of these tours are just fabulous because you have very special permissions. It allows you to go in places like the Shaft of Osiris, which I shall never forget. And we could tick off a bunch of names, places you've heard, and then parts of places that you've heard of that you never get to go to. So they arrange all that. But even then, you kind of play it cool. You don't go whip out the SEM, and take a chip off the block of the Serapeum or whatever. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you play it cool. But you were actually getting in there and laying down scientific equipment and taking very careful laboratory grade measurements.
That's right. I cannot talk a lot about it right now, but
understood. Yes. Yeah. And I've actually got some experience. I've paid for hundreds of thousands of dollars of aerial photogrammetry over the years, because before LiDAR, to characterize a large piece of land and its elevation down to an inch, which was needed for hundreds of acres, we would actually pay this company in Greenville, South Carolina, would fly a jet over whatever the property was and shoot the two eyeballs at it. And then a young man out in Nightdale had to sit there and find every single point. And he was a well-paid fellow, just sat out at his house, had a family and everything. And he had that big board and he would find all those points, which was a human operation. And now all of that's been digitized, except for the capture. You still got to have the target. I used to go lay the targets in fields. Like the targets would be big banners, right? Yeah. In fact, one time, I don't mean to go on, but one time when I was very first in the wetland business, they told me, I was working for this company, and they said, go out and kill all the weeds in the ditches because it can't see the bottom of the ditches. So some country boy took me to the farm store and strapped a thing of paraquat on my back, like that dangerous damn herbicide. And, I'd been working as a staffer in Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden I'm out there and I got paraquat in my back and I'm spraying this stuff, all in interest of having photogrammetry performed on land, so they're old histories of trying to capture things and measure them well. Yeah. And has that raced along like so much other technology has? Help characterize the strength of your tools versus the strength of tools that may have been available to you 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
So if I'm not mistaken, this kind of mobility was not existing like 5 years ago. So there were possibilities for high quality, high accuracy, 3D data capturing, but to this level that we can go into the museum, like in this so tiny space, we can use basically two small tables and just scan something with 20 micron accuracy that was not achievable a few years ago.
And totally non-invasively.
Yes.
You're not molesting the artifacts whatsoever, and that must make your pitch easier. It's always hard to get access to such things.
Yeah, and actually this laser scan is quite similar to LiDAR. LiDAR is measuring the time of flight, and this laser technology is measuring the reflection angle.
The reflectivity.
the reflection angle
Interesting.
of these
Or the
beams. Yeah,
angle. How it
that
distorts the light. It takes a
that's why
look
you
at
have
it.
to triangulate around the object. So it's not just one steady thing. You have to move it around, and then it will track the position of
Yeah.
your scanner based on the markers.
Yeah.
But it will triangulate based on the reflection angles.
Do they not use the bouncing laser LiDAR in tight situations like this because it's so damn close that the light, they just can't measure light going back and forth between a few feet where you can measure it from a
It's
plane?
possible.
Yeah, that ultimately you might be able to use that technology when the chips and everything catches up to the ability to measure light bouncing back and forth
Exactly.
in 2 feet, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
Crazy, man. Well, I think, man, this just first occurred to me. But, I'm a part of a comet research group. And if you know the Younger Dryas event, this is a different lane, but I figure you do.
I heard about it. Yeah.
Well, I always call it their original hack. And this was Alan West, and I participated in it pretty much right off the bat. But the original approach, which was Alan's, was analogous to what y'all are doing. And what it was that if we're going to go test, let's say, the black mat or areas that may have a black mat, if we're going to go find 13,000-year-old places, which are everywhere, not literally everywhere, but in all aggrading soils, you should have 13,000-year-old soil somewhere in there. But you don't want to go those places because you got to go prove the age and the provenance and all of that. And no one will take you seriously if you go find a brand new black mat site. So what you do is you go to the places that have been absolutely scrubbed by the literature, like Blackwater Draw and Murray Springs in Arizona, that have been studied for 50, 60, 70 years and hundreds of papers and thousands of dates. And then you ask nicely to have access to it. And after you get that access, see the analogy? Then you've got provenance of the soils. You've got provenance of the dates. And oftentimes you don't even have to date it. Now, they oftentimes did for their own purposes, but they got museums around these places. They know where it's 13,800 or 12,800 years old. And of course, there's always a dark algal wasteland above it for 1,200 years. Okay, so isn't that cool that pajama scientists, you're one step up from that, but so is Alan, but non-institutionally sponsored scientists. That's what you and Alan are. I'm a pajama scientist, okay? But non-institutionally sponsored can use tools, because back when what he's doing is then getting that soil and looking at it through TEMs, right? So you got to have a hell of an instrument there, which no one had ever done. To further the analogy, no one had ever bothered to go take samples. I would say the black mat, but technically, to be a geek, it's below the black mat is where you find the stuff, right? But so testing below the black mat, no one had ever taken that and put it in a transmission electron microscope, which is kind of unsurprising, kind of surprising, I don't know, but no one had really looked at it. And I don't mean to stretch it too far, but that's how renegades, if put it that way or whatever, heretical scientists, historians, can use tools that are available to us now, bring them in contexts which have provenance, and get a lot of traction.
Exactly. And that's what actually we experience in the Petri Museum as well, because the staff, the curator and the archaeologist who was actually supervising us, they were surprised that this is probably, as they said, this is probably the most advanced tech they have ever seen in this museum.
Of course it is.
Kind of no one did this before. And it was a very special moment because I could handle the Petri core. That was like, my hands were almost shaking.
I bet.
It was very special for me and also for the others, as I could see.
Hey, speaking of the Petri core, I don't have a very good mechanical mind. Like, I can't fix things or build things or anything like that. So I guess it's that part of my brain. But help me understand, and I think I get it, but just for anyone else interested, why does having a spiral in a core. I want you to explain the Petri core, if you will, and then what it looks like and what it shows, and then why it's important that this thing called the Petri core is spiral. Why does a spiral suggest something unusual? But you take it from there.
Yeah, I can share the video
great, man.
in the meantime.
Because I was having to listen to you talk about it on the snakes without seeing it. So now I'll get it live on my own show, which is a great podcast, by the way. And yours is too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it needs some further analysis, and still we are working on the vases. We scanned like 25 artifacts, and after the scanning, we have to build our own special analysis toolset, the software for this, because not the conventional industrial standard softwares are not really designed to do such an analysis on vases where we cannot really fit simple geometries to these objects. So we need to align the vases, but I will talk about later. So we did a lot of scans, and actually the Petri core is a very controversial object because everyone is trying to prove or disprove the existence of these spirals or consistent spiral.
What is it? What's it a core of? Let's give people the very top view. The Petri core is what? Where did it come from?
So this is basically a drill core sample made out of granite. So we know that the Egyptians made, or someone made, a lot of core drilling into granite, hard material.
So you see, I've got pictures of them all over Egypt. You see these circular, we call them indentions, cores. It's a core which has been cored like out of an apple, right out of granite. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And there are a lot of speculations how they were able to do this. The simplest explanation is to have a tube, and you rotate somehow with some kind of mechanical attachments. You rotate this tube while you are using a fixed or loose abrasive under the tube. So according to the mainstream explanation, they were using quartz sand and water, so wet sand under this tube. And by rotating this tube, this basically they are drilling a hole into this hard material. And after this tube is kind of drilled into the object, they can just pull it out and break the core off. So they will basically have some kind of a hole in this hard material. And the speculations that if this is a spiral, or if this core contains a spiral, that means they were turning something into the granite with a consistent feed rate. And according to the measurements of Flinders Petri, and also I think Chris Dunn measured it several times, wrapped a thread around it, the Petri Museum made a latex mold for him. And the implications are, if it's a spiral, then the penetration rate of the spiral is like, if I'm not mistaken, 500 times higher than what we can achieve today. So that's the big thing with this core.
And I've seen videos of people trying to say, "Oh, this isn't that complicated." You take, like you say, you take a tube. It's called a copper tube or whatever. Put sand, and that's a thin metal tube, and then you grind that with some sand, and maybe there's some other secret sauce. But when they're doing that, are they going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? Or are they turning it, but very slowly? And
you can do both.
Okay, you can do both. That would not leave a spiral signature because it would be so time consuming and slow. But if you use something fast, it leaves a spiral because you're drilling into the thing. Is that correct?
I think it doesn't have to be fast.
It doesn't have to be fast.
It doesn't have to be fast, but you can roll it back and forth, and you can also attach like a big stone. I don't know the term for this, but you can attach
that's the crude way. That's the
yes,
crude way
and then
that does
just
not
spin
leave.
this. Yeah.
Okay, but you would not expect that to result in a spiral groove, or you, because you're suspecting.
I want to be on the safe side and say that
Yeah, be on the safe side.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure what we can expect, because what we have seen so far, I'm sure you know the Scientist Against Myth channel. They did some experimenting with this, and the results from them seem to be, I mean, the grooves seem to be glazed over on each other, and it's not very distinctive. We would need to scan that.
I got you. But I guess part of the idea is that, let's say it's exaggerated and it's going down like that spiral. Now they're actually that far
Like
apart or whatever.
first we can say helical, and then
Helical
if it's
spirals.
extended, then we can say
But
spiral.
for the certain distance it goes, it has a time component to go. I'm crazy camera just went off again. Probably a pretty good time. Look, it's AI, so it must know. Okay. I'll try that again. So I don't know. Okay, so as it's going down, if you see a distance between it was cutting here and now it's cutting there, you know there was some amount of time, and that thing is moving through there so quickly that each time it turned to go down another spiral, it had to go X amount into the granite during that turn.
That's kind of the penetration rate.
What the penetration rate? So, yeah, and
so
that
how deep is it going into the material during one rotation? Basically,
that's right. And
that
presumably
was,
those leave distinct spirals, and the crude methods left questionable. Well, it doesn't look like the Petri core, but there's some spirality
the
to
big
it.
question is the loose versus the fixed abrasive. If they use the loose abrasive like quartz sand, then you don't expect to have some kind of distinctive grooves.
It's the abrasive, yeah.
If they use the fixed abrasive, which, for example, like some fraction of gemstone or diamond or something embedded into this tube, which is drilling, you could expect like a distinctive mark, tool mark. But you cannot really see a very long, consistent, easily distinctive, easily distinguishable, consistent line on the Petri core, because the grooves are so fine. Sometimes the laser scanner cannot even capture the grooves, because seemingly it's like not a physical groove, it's like a crystal fracture in the material, which is visible to the human eye but has no depth to it. Sometimes it's like this on the core, and sometimes just you are following a line and it's breaking into two parts, and you cannot decide, is it because the loose abrasive or the fixed jewel just
because it was turning
break?
one little garnet nugget up there and turning another one down there at the same time, not because it was moving through it.
Or the fixing, the abrasive fixing into this material was not that sophisticated, and this fixed jewel, I don't know, diamond tip just was breaking off, and that's why it didn't continue in one consistent line. So it's very hard.
Interesting. Hey, let me return for a second to the on-site photogrammetry. What sites did you utilize those techniques in? Or can you not say at this point? Okay.
At this
We're
point,
moving
I would
on.
be not. Yeah.
Did Kyle also press you on that? And I think he had to punt too in that other podcast. Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about it, but yeah, I think we will talk about it, but
that's great, man. Hey, that's
not
the
right
fun
now.
of this whole thing. And by the way, I should mention we're probably an hour into this, that you were unable to join us, but March 22nd, we're joining your friend, collaborator, and arts patron, Adam Young, in Manhattan. And we're going to do a sit down update live stream from the Beekman Hotel. And he's going to bring some of the vases. We're going to have a small group of people in person, and anybody can get a ticket. It's out there at the Meteor Stream drop down of the Cosmic Summit 2025 website, and very affordable, actually. and look in on us. And as we kind of interactively go through it and spend a couple of hours with Adam and the Vases at the Beekman Hotel Saturday afternoon, March 22nd. Okay, but I say that in the context of there's more to come to this story. This is not a story with a definable end, right? It's a research, it's an investigation.
Yeah. And that's why we are also very careful about the results, because we are trying to double check our measurements. So the software we are developing supposed to be reviewed by other scientists, and then after we have that, we can basically announce the results from the Petri Museum, and that's the plan, which will probably happen quite soon. But we have to be
it's going to be after
this.
March 22nd, but we're going to have as thorough an update, and actually the first deliberate public display as a result of these investigations. This will be the first time vases are available for the public to come see and talk about without looking through the glass case at the museum, basically on the 22nd. And then we'll have a full update on where things stand now. And then things are going to continue to advance into the summer and probably well beyond.
Yeah. My plan is to bring some 3D prints for the summit of these Petri vases, and also to present the results. But regarding the 22nd, I don't know what Adam will bring or what's his plan. Mm-hmm. What vases, which objects.
Well, we've got a plan, and I'll keep that quiet for now too. People will have to tune in to see what we got going on live from New York on Saturday afternoon. You get the joke? It's Saturday Night Live, the old show here, live from New York Saturday night. That was Adam's joke. And he live from New York, it's Saturday afternoon. I think it sounds like a fun thing to do on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah. And that's as good as a museum trip, but you get a full lecture, you get a back and forth. It's something live going on the internet worldwide right now. There are millions of people talking about it on Joe Rogan, watching it on Joe Rogan, and you can kind of come be a part of it. So I hope it's popular. If it's not, we're going to get a lot of long form content and that kind of stuff. We're going to follow this. The Cosmic Summit's going to follow it wherever it goes. And the Beekman thing on 22nd is our first bite at the apple. It just happens to be the big apple.
I will be preparing with some video footage, like a few minutes of telling what we have done and how. But yeah, it will be amazing.
Fantastic, man. Well, I'm so glad you could participate in the summit too, because that's going to be a special new, both of these things, doing a live stream elsewhere about an investigation and having investigators on site and available in a dedicated room at the summit are two things we hadn't done before, but it deserves it. I mean, this is the most profoundly important thing going on in what I call unconventional or heterodox history. There is nothing more important, because if you don't mind me characterizing it, I know this is your passion but as a fan of it, it's so important because, first of all, I've been a fan of all these subjects for years, and the Vases was a new one. So it's always good to have something new. And it was quantifiable and tangible. There were things to discover that were available to be discovered. And that's what y'all are doing. You're going and applying tools that weren't available to things that weren't investigated. And the consequence, to get back to it, is a fundamental part of the summit's investigation and what we're trying to, bring forth in a lot of different contexts, is that the current understanding of our past does not account for anyone that could have produced these. If the measurements are if the measurements are valid.
Yeah.
But then somebody's got a problem, and you cannot, now it is dismissed. It's dismissed on a daily basis by people that make a hobby out of dismissing this. But they're always weak dismissals. I mean, I just think we got them on the run on this thing. And it doesn't mean, I like what Kyle was saying the other day. I loved what he was saying. That does not mean Sasquatch is stomping around in the woods just because 5,000 years ago they had a tool that we haven't discovered yet. And what happens, and I'm not exaggerating, but so much, that the critics of anything that's heterodox, particularly if the sciencier it is, the worse it is, but say that if I give on this, that's what he was calling it, the dam effect. If I let the dam break and say there's an undiscovered tool technology in prehistoric Egypt, then I also, believe that people are having their anuses probed in their bedrooms in New Mexico by aliens or something. It's just these things. You don't have to, you can come in and that's what you said right off the bat, that you came in as a skeptic. And by God, believe it or not, I did too.
And I don't actually care if it turns out that these are all fakes.
There you go.
I just want to figure out what's happening, and that's all.
Amen, brother. And I know this was a long putt compared to this, but that's the way I was with Malcolm Bendall. I was just curious. I just want to figure out what the thing works. Don't get me started on that. But and people immediately figured that you're an advocate if you're in the room with them. And I guess sometimes I stepped into advocacy, but because I don't care where I am, I don't have to have a lane. I'll pick my own damn lane. But I didn't feel like an advocate. I felt like an investigator. And people, and you, I think you understand this. I'd like to speak to it, and we'll wrap up. But that world where people assume that you're an advocate and don't accept your open mind is open to the skeptical explanations as well. That's part of the open mind. The open mind just doesn't open up into the fantastic explanations. The open mind includes the whole gamut. And that's very possible epistemologically. It's not. Yeah. You can do that.
And it's very interesting when Chris King comes along and then he explains that in his perspective, these 20 micron things are achievable by rudimentary techniques and tools.
Okay.
Like that's a journal bearing and these stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be in a group with these kind of people where we have some old history guys, we have some more grounded technical guys who are more skeptical and they are claiming that they can explain these things with easy explanations. And I think that's the most important aspect of the Artifact Foundation, that we are trying to gather open-minded researchers and experts.
Yeah, as long as they'll play by the rules and not get ad hominem and try to turn it into a shit show,
And it's a very interesting. I was just talking a few weeks ago with a very, very interesting German gentleman, which I will pronounce soon on my Ancient Technology podcast. But he was convinced, and he's still convinced, that the iron was utilized much, much before the Hittites.
There was before the Bronze Age. Yeah.
And if those Nagada people, who these things and hard vases are attributed to, I'm just wondering, what if they had iron tools, but they are all gone by now? Not all, because sometimes they found
because they'd rust away
things. Yeah, for example.
So you can have leftover Roman iron that hadn't rusted away, but you get back like 3,000 and 5,000 years, and it's just not going to make it. You think?
Maybe. I don't know. If it would just put this entire conversation into a different.
Well, there was something last week. I sound like Joe Rogan. Damn it, who never knows where he saw something. But there was an ancient iron revelation last week. Let me ask you something else. Okay, so it's Mr. King that says it can be okay.
Yeah,
and he sounds like a good, open-minded guy the whole way. He's going on trips with y'all and whatnot. But how do folks like that, or even the more strident critics, how do they account for the math? Because you might have, God knows we know the dynastic Egyptians did. You might have amazing artistic abilities somehow and able to manufacture, but you would also that Mark Vist, if you can speak to him, he defined certain geometries in there that required a very high level of understanding. It's not just manufacturing, it's manufacturing to math.
We have to split this topic into two different subtopics, let's say. One is the manufacturing aspect. So if you have the plan, how would you execute it?
Mm-hmm.
And the other part is how would you get the plan?
Mm-hmm.
When you have the plan, you can execute it by, so are you familiar with a pantograph? It's a mechanism which can scale up things. You don't really...
Yeah.
So Chris King said, for example, that you can easily design something in a big scale, and you scale it down with a pantograph, so your errors will be also scaled down, maybe almost invisible by then. So
that's a theoretical pantograph.
No, the pantograph works, and that's an existing thing.
Well, that's the thing. You draw it on one side, and it's over there making a smaller one on the other,
yeah,
right?
But you can do this in 3D as well.
But with like common prehistoric tools, or
that's a different topic. That those tools,
not tools.
We cannot find those tools attributing to those peoples or in those graves. So there is obviously something that is missing.
Mm-hmm.
But the other aspect, how would you get to the design?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say anything concrete about the radial traversal pattern yet, but I'm working with a mathematician friend of mine who is actually trying to prove his theory, how these samples could be designed in a much simple way with very easy tools like rope or other kind of things. Because drawing ellipses is not that hard to do if you have the right, very rudimentary tools. So I'm looking forward to this topic. To be honest, I didn't study Marquist's article yet thoroughly, so I need to do that.
Well, it's pretty complex. I just tried to soak it up and trusted him.
Yeah, I'm fully flooded and immersed into this vase analysis and the scanning and organizing stuff. But eventually I want to do this, and then we can compare.
Well, that gets into interpretation. You're not into interpretation yet. You're trying to characterize.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, not that you can't sit around and speculate as well, but...
So we didn't address this math with Chris King. He was addressing the technological, the manufacturing point of view. Obviously, the math and the design should be addressed by someone who is like a mathematician or something like.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing you June 20th, man. Thank you for joining us on here.
Thank you for the possibility and for the invite.
And your podcast is Ancient Technology. So encourage everybody to go over there and like, share, but definitely subscribe. And also subscribe to Cosmic Summit socials. We're at Cosmic Summit on all platforms, major and minor. Later on today, we're going to open up the YouTube play button.
Wow.
Which I've had sitting around now for 2 months. But we're so busy and so dedicated to our job that we have not been able to get together to celebrate and to open it up. But I think we're doing it later today. So we got 100,000.
How much time did it take to achieve that? How much time was it to achieve it?
Almost exactly 2 years. So it started January 10th, January 10th, 23, and January 1st, 25, we had 100,000 subscribers, and now it's March 13th, and we've got another 39,000. So we're at 139,000. So we've gained a third of what it took us 2 years to gain in 3 months.
Nice.
Yeah. So things are accelerating. That's what you want. and that is because we have a great team, and they're going to be cutting you up, as we say it. Now, don't get scared. That sounds kind of threatening, but we're going to have them cut you up too, Karoly. Okay. And by that, I mean, what we do is take the content from the summit, and we'll get some there, but beforehand and afterwards, we also take content where you have been other places, like the Ancient Technology Podcast, and clip out of there so that we can get these ideas out to people around the world in the form that they prefer, which is somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Yeah. Right. So, hey man, it is good to meet you. And
Cheers.
Glad to have you on the Cosmic Summit team, and I will get a Guinness for you this evening. Okay? Okay,
Cheers
well, listen, just stay in touch, and we'll see you in June. Look forward to welcoming you to North Carolina.
Thank you. I'm looking
Karoly
forward to it.
Poka. Thank you, sir.